the idea, or the problem is Bitcoin is currently deemed by GAAP accounting in the US as an indefinite intangible asset. And that means if you buy $1 billion of it, you're required every second of the day to shop for the lowest bidder. If you're buying Bitcoin with a time horizon of less than 4 years, I don't think you should buy it. Bitcoin is a digital monetary asset on an open, permissionless network. And because it's decentralized and no company and no country owns it, it's really a thing for the world. So I don't think there's any other asset that I can think of where every intelligent person that understands it decides to start doing everything they can to make it more valuable. In the first decade, Bitcoin was dominated by a bunch of traders with leverage and offshore exchanges, and they were speculators, and that was one group of people.
Yes.
This year, after March, you've got insurance companies, corporations, treasuries, institutional investors. They're buying this stuff instead of gold. They're buying it to hold it for a decade as an inflation hedge. They're not using leverage. They're not using offshore exchanges. They're not speculators. Their mindset is, I'm going to hold it for 10 years. What can I buy that's better? If I sell it, I'm going to generate a tax bill and I'm going to buy something inferior. So they're not going to sell it, and that means you're not going to see, I think, that kind of volatility. Yeah, so the idea, or the problem is Bitcoin is currently deemed by GAAP accounting in the US as an indefinite intangible asset. And that means if you buy $1 billion of it, you're required every second of the day to shop for the lowest bidder. You won't see it reflected in the balance sheet, which means the company that has $10 billion of Bitcoin in the quarter where Bitcoin price doubles has exactly the same P&L results as a company with $1 of Bitcoin in the quarter where the price doubles. So there's no transparency to any investor. It's problematic. And of course, if you're a casual investor, you can't really understand the financial situation of the company without extensive pro forma schedules. So as a practical matter, a public company needs to create pro forma non-GAAP operating income schedules to relate the non-GAAP results to the EPS results. And then you need to provide people enough information for them to do their own calculation about how much asset you really have. There are other accounting treatments, other accounting systems where they wouldn't do it that way. They would treat it as a financial asset, and you would mark it to market. And so if you held Bitcoin in a fund, if I had a mutual fund and it was backed by Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin doubled and the fund doubled, I would actually mark it up and I would take investment income and I would actually mark it on my balance sheet, because fund accounting is different than commodity and Bitcoin accounting and property accounting. I think the way you use Bitcoin is a long-term savings account. So if you want to have a portion of your money that you like to gamble with and speculate with and bet on things you're passionate about, take that part of your money and invest it in new ventures or invest it in cool things. Take another portion of your money that you want to save for the next 20 years or 30 years, and put that in Bitcoin and just leave it there and don't get caught up in all the back and forth, because, it used to be people.
MicroStrategy speculate at all, like on the cyclical nature of it, or it's in there permanently?
I have bought either through entities, through MicroStrategy or through entities I control, 88,000 Bitcoin. I never sold one Satoshi. So we calculate the full fluctuation or volatility of our cash needs over the next 12 months. We keep that in a very stable currency that's denominated in the same units as the obligations. And then stuff we're not going to need, we call treasury, and then we invest in our treasury assets. We invest in Bitcoin, but but my advice to anybody would be establish a treasury policy, and the right thing to hold for a decade would be a portfolio of scarce assets that will go up in value in the face of inflation. So I'm biased toward Bitcoin, but if you're not going to do Bitcoin, I mean, for God's sake, buy a nice house you want to live in forever, right? Buy furniture you want to use forever. Buy commodities, that you can use. If you want to buy stock, buy high quality stocks that you think will be able to raise their revenues or their cash flows faster than the rate of money expansion. 6 billion mobile phones with Bitcoin software or Bitcoin assets on the mobile phone. I mean, that's how you really deliver it to the world. But you can't underestimate the power. Like when an insurance company buys Bitcoin and they've got, or Fidelity, Fidelity's got 20 million customers, an insurance company's got 50 million customers. When they buy Bitcoin, you just delivered an insurance policy that's a derivative of Bitcoin to 50 million people, right? If a government, let's say if El Salvador buys Bitcoin, then any currency issued by El Salvador becomes a Bitcoin derivative. Like, here's a good idea. Turkey goes and prints Turkish lira, buys billions of dollars of Bitcoin, announces it, and now everybody in Turkey is carrying Turkish lira, which is a Bitcoin derivative. It's backed by Bitcoin in their pocket. So this spreads in lots of different ways. Every corporation, every government, in essence, can create derivatives of Bitcoin simply by owning the Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And every big tech company can build Bitcoin and the protocol into their software. Bitcoin is the dominant crypto asset network. It's the oldest, it's the strongest, it's the most secure, and it was engineered to do one thing well, which is to keep track of 21 million virtual coins in cyberspace. The other cryptos are applications, and application networks are focused upon functionality or performance. Bitcoin is optimized for durability, integrity, security. If I want to store $1 billion for 1,000 years, I don't want a lot of bells and whistles on it. I just want to know it's secure and nobody's going to change it. So why Bitcoin? Because Satoshi started with a model of gold, and then he got rid of all the defects of gold. If you took gold and you said you can't mine anymore, you can't use it for jewelry, and nobody can rehypothecate it or short it, and you could take personal custody of it in your head and no one can steal it from you, you would have a better gold. And so Bitcoin is designed to be that long-term store of value. And of course, humans have been looking for a way to store their life force in a store of value for thousands and thousands of years. It's kind of part of the human dream.